How many of you were around when the movie Ghostbusters came out? Or have seen it? Well, of course, you know. My talk title today is Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters! It's so funny because I remember when the movie came out, and every time somebody was like, you know, picking up the phone, it's like, who are you gonna call? And it was like, Ghostbusters. And it was just hilarious because these goons and goblins were just kind of showing out all over the place in the movie, of course, right? And they were not necessarily like ugly creatures as much as they were funny and hideous kind of looking to me, you know. But my talk today has a lot to do with that. As we take a look at the month of October and how at the end of the month we celebrate Halloween, or people celebrate Halloween, or that's usually the theme, you know, with ghosts and goblins and things that are scary. My theme for the month is that's scary, all right, and it's really taking a look at the things that we believe or the things that we think or the things that we put into motion so much that when we really take a look at them, they're not necessarily ghosts and goblins, but they are, because when we really recognize them for what they are and recognize that that's what we've been believing, that's kind of scary. You know, so it's pretty much dispelling or uncovering or shining the light on some of these quote-unquote ghosts and goblins, on some of these things that we've been carrying with us as if they were Louis Vuitton luggage, and making our own and just kind of carrying it with us like, yeah, this is who I am. And when we look at it, and it's like, it's a fake, it's a fraud, it's a phony. It's an imitation, if you will. You know, and so like in the movie Ghostbusters, and even in the song, you know, Ray Parker Jr. asked a question, you know, when there's weird things going on in your neighborhood, who are you going to call? Or when you have these thoughts, these invisible thoughts and things running through your head, who are you going to call? Metaphysically, this really represents those ideas, those thoughts, those practices that we have in our life that are scaring us to death, or that are really scaring us from being our full self. Those beliefs, those ideas that somehow there's something out there that's going to affect me right here. That there's some power or some presence or some force out there that dictates and supersedes and overrides my knowing and totally sabotages everything for me. Now, y'all have those things. I know that I've had them, and that I continue to look at ways that I have these little ghosts and goblins and little things that continue to rear their ugly heads in my life, probably like in your life, that prevent me from living my full potential, that prevent us from really living in spiritual community and really knowing the truth of who we are. Here's an example. Sometimes those ghosts may show up as self-doubt. Why, I'm not good enough. Or I don't think I can do that. Or I'm too old to pursue that. Or I, don't have enough money to go there and to do that and to pursue this dream. Self-doubt is one of those ghosts that kind of come up. Now, what I know about ghosts, if there's anything to know about ghosts, is that they're written about a lot, in the sense that a ghost is a non-physical thing that somehow has made an impression upon us, and then every time something happens, we recall it, and it seems to appear. So for instance, like even in a haunted house or things like that, sometimes we think we saw something, non-physical thing, just floating around. And then what we do is we give it credence and we go, that was Uncle Johnny. That was Aunt Sally. And we name it, we give it a name, and then, every time, there's Uncle Johnny again, We personalize it. It's like personalizing your self-doubt. It's this non-physical thing that anytime something happens, we think we see something that's not necessarily really there. And it's the same with us, in the sense of when we're talking about like self-doubt is a ghost. It is a ghost. Really, it's not physical at all. It doesn't really exist, but there we are, claiming it, calling it forth, and allowing it to operate in our life. And allowing it to operate in such a way that it detracts us, and it prevents us, and it stops us, and it pushes us back, and it blocks us from living our full life. It's not like this ghost is confidence. Imagine if we really had confidence, what we would be like, where we would go, who we would talk to, how we would behave, how we would perform, how we would do our jobs, what better parents we would be, what better adult children we would be, what better friends we might be if we were to operate from this place. But no, our ghosts show up as these things that prevent us and block us from fully living to our highest and our fullest potential. And when we allow ourselves to have these quote-unquote ghosts show up in our lives, these things that block us and prevent us from living to our full potential and our full capacity, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's fear, whether it's lack and limitation. Whatever it is for you, you know the name of your ghost. You've probably named them. You probably know beyond a shadow of a doubt. If I were to ask any of you, what's the one thing you have the most challenge with? Somebody's going to say relationships, money, career, self-doubt, fear, limitation, health, wholeness. And the bottom line is that it all has to do with our idea and belief in separation. That somehow or another we are separate from the life that God is. And that is furthest from the truth. However, when these ghosts come forth, when they show themselves, when we even see them, when we're doing really well, life is just happening, we're tiptoeing through the tulips, we're whistling Dixie because life is so good, and we spot the ghost. You know that it's there, and it's like, it's creeping. It's creeping. There's that self-doubt, that fear, that lack, that limitation, that worry, that idea that somehow it's just too good to be true. My life is so good, but I know the other shoe's going to drop at some point or another. When those things begin to come up and we see this kind of thing kind of lingering, that's the moment that we get to call. That we get to call. What are we calling? And what are we calling upon? Who are you going to call? When it's totally on us, when we're in the thick of it, when we're in the thick of the doubt and the fear, who are we going to call? Now, I know that Candace alluded to, I could ask my husband, I could ask my wife, I could ask my neighbor, I could ask my best friend, my kids, my parents. But really, when we want the answer that's going to be for the highest and best, not only for our own life, but for the lives that we touch. Because whatever happens for me is also happening as a witness, and is also happening for the lives that I touch. And the same thing for you. It's kind of like the spokes on a wheel with the center. There are lives that we touch. And so whatever happens for us, in effect, is also affecting our community because we're one. So are we calling the person who's going to wallow with us in the mud? Are we calling the person who's going to say, "Ooh, I know just how you can get even with so-and-so," and begin, to tell you exactly what to do? Or are we going to call upon that indwelling presence, within us that is the solution to all of our daily living situations? Is our practice, our spiritual practice, that strong that even when we're in it fully and sometimes feel so bombarded, like everything is falling upon us, when that fear is so deep and so heavy that it feels like we're just carrying the weight of the world on our back, are we that disciplined enough to call upon Spirit, to call upon that indwelling presence, that great I am that is within each and every one of us? It is not necessarily outside of us, so we don't have to pick up our cell phones and punch some numbers. We don't have to go on the internet or dial 411 to find out who can handle this situation. What we get to do is recognize that we get to call upon that indwelling presence that is our very life, and we get to shut up and listen. Because we already know what the situation is. We just got to listen for that clear direction that only comes when we're communing in spirit. That clear direction that comes when we just shut out the external world and allow that still small voice within us that is the voice of the great I am to speak to us in a language in which we understand. The call that we're going to make is not long distance. It's not an international call or intergalactic even. It's very local. It's right here. That indwelling presence is the Ghostbuster, is that power and that presence that says, oh, there you go, believing in lack and limitation and fear and doubt and worry and separation. Don't you know, beloved, that right where you are, I am? Don't you know that which I am, you are? Remember this truth. You don't have to make anything happen. You don't have to convince yourself that that's who you are. Hello, it's already who we are. It's a matter of just remembering that this is already who we are. We are the life that God is. We are the way that love, that life, that God shows up on this planet. God's showing up as you, as each and every one of you. Beautifully, magnificently, brilliantly. You don't have to settle for less. You don't have to believe that you're not good enough. Right where you are, God is. Right where you are, love is. Peace, joy, abundance, health, wholeness, divine creativity, beauty. That is who you are. Anything else is just some ghost, some image, something trying to take you away from the truth of who you really are, trying to scare you into believing that you're separate from the life that God is. And that is an impossibility. It is impossible for you to be anything other than the life of God expressing as you divinely, powerfully, perfectly right now. It is an impossibility. You cannot be anything else. It reminds me of a talk that I did early on when I first became a minister. It was like Superman, right? You know, like He comes from another planet with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. I was impressionable as a kid. What can I say? So here he is. Instead of just being Superman, he's trying to disguise himself and be Clark Kent. I'm just this regular guy. That's exactly what we're doing. We're forgetting. We're trying to, quote unquote, just be human when we forget that, yes, indeed, we are incarnated in these beautiful, divine human bodies, but what we are is spirit, God, all power, all grace, all glory, all love. God in these bodies. That's who we are. And when we allow these ghosts, these goblins, these things to take us away from the truth of who we are, what we're settling for is mediocrity. So who you're going to call is you're going to call upon that indwelling presence, which is really your higher self. And you're going to make the phone call or the call, and then you're going to be quiet, and you're going to listen. And you're going to connect with that truth. And you're going to remember who you are. Because we have forgotten. By the way, that's the sign language for forgotten. Forgotten. Makes sense, right? It's like somebody wiped our memory away. And that's what happens. Is that our memory gets wiped away and we forget who we really are. But we're actually going to remember who we are by practicing and being in the stillness and in the silence, by remembering that in our prayer work, that our prayer work is affirmation, that it is simply recognizing the power and the presence that is God, not necessarily beseeching or saying, hey, all power, all presence, give me. No, it is simply recognizing that that power and that presence that is already living in, through, and as me. It is my life. And just like the reading, it's like electricity. We don't go with a lamp or our cell phones to charge it to the plug and go, okay, electricity God, please, I recognize you. Please charge my phone. Please, as I plug you in now, I beg of you to please just give me the power to charge my cell phone so I can stay connected with the people that I love and text and go on Facebook. Okay, I trust and believe and plug it in. Woo! Thank you, electricity. Woo! Seems pretty silly, right? But that's how sometimes we do with God. Like, please, God, if you only get me out of this one. If you only help me this time. If you only help me find my wallet, I promise that I will put it in a place regularly so I could always find it. Right? When here, what we're really knowing is that there's not a power outside of us that grants us anything. Yes, God is everywhere present. This power and this presence is everywhere present. So it is indeed outside of us, but it is indeed right where we are. It is our very life. Our very life is that life that God is. And so when we begin to allow ourselves to believe in our self-doubt, in our fear, in our worry, in our separation, what we're really saying is, I denounce my birthright. It's okay. I like being in the mud over here with these other pigs, eating leftovers, smelling like we do. When in fact, since we are that life that God is, everything everything has already been given, and everything is available to us right now. We don't have to beg. We don't have to borrow or steal. We get to stand in the knowing that this is our truth and this is who we are. Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind book, writes a little bit about this. He says, and I'm paraphrasing actually, and I'm adding this in, so you know. But when we think about whatever these quote-unquote ghosts are that continuously come up, whether we're in the thick of it bombarded, or whether life is good and we kind of catch a shadow of it and give it some power, what we get to do is, through our spiritual practice, dispel that. That's pretty much calling the Ghostbusters, right? That's pretty much calling upon that power and that presence within us, recognizing the truth of who and what we are, and that is just busting, poof, into the nothingness from which it came. So Ernest Holmes pretty much is saying the same thing. He says here in chapter 8, we should strive toward a perfect vision, a perfect conception. We should expand our thought until it realizes all good, and then cut right through all that appears to be, and use this almighty power for definite purposes. So already, he's telling you exactly what I was just saying, right? We got to cut through what appears to be, these ghosts, whatever, and use the almighty power for definite purposes. We should daily feel a deeper union with life. So every day our practice should be to connect with life, whether it's through a conversation and connecting with another human being, whether it's connecting with the sun as it shines in the sky and you feel its rays of love and beauty just pouring upon you, whether it's through water, whether it's through your pet, whether it's through your husband or your wife or your beloved or your children. Daily we should connect with life. Right? We should feel a deeper union with life, a greater sense of that indwelling God. So taking the time out to feel that indwelling presence, that right where I am, right here, within me, where it cannot be hurt, harmed, or touched, is this indwelling presence. So daily, I am to experience and know this connection, this oneness, this union with this indwelling presence. So we should daily feel a deeper union with life, a greater sense of that indwelling God, the God of the seen and the unseen within us. When we speak into this mind, we have sown a seed of thought in the absolute, and we may rest in peace. We need not make haste, for it is done unto us as we believe. In that day that they call upon me, I will answer. So the promise here is that as we call upon Spirit, Spirit answers. Spirit calls to Spirit, Spirit answers. The moment I turn away from the world of appearances, what I'm doing is I'm making a phone call. I'm making that call. I'm kind of going within, I'm making the call, and I'm meeting Spirit right there. I'm meeting life right there. I'm meeting love right there. I'm meeting confidence right there. I'm meeting joy right there. I'm meeting abundance right there. I'm meeting health right there. Right there, that's the call. And it answers, because the minute I say, I want to know a greater truth, that greater truth is like, here I am, what's up? I'm right here, what you need? I got you. I got you. Because I call, because you make the call. So when these ghosts, when this fear, doubt, anxiety, when all this stuff, lack and limitation and health issues, marriage issues, financial issues, whatever, when these ghosts begin to appear, we simply make the call, I want to know a greater truth. We rest in the silence. We get to know that indwelling presence. We get to feel a deeper connection with life, and we're reminded of the truth that right where we are, God is. There's nothing else We are the life that God is. God is the way that we are the way that God is showing up on this planet. Perfectly and divinely. And the minute we choose differently, the minute we choose it, that ghost is gone. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call? You're going to call upon your higher self. You're going to call, you're going to simply knock at the door. You're going to knock and the door shall be open. You're knocking at the door of your heart, of your consciousness, of that deeper knowing. So right now we're going to call. Right now, through our silence, we're going to call. And we're going to call that indwelling I am presence. And whatever ghost it is that you know that continuously come up for you, that's what you're going to bring into our silent time, into this call. And we're going to go so deep for 5 minutes that something different is going to call you. But right now, we're going to make that call. So right where you are, just simply become still. And as you breathe in deeply and let it out, we're simply taking that posture of, I'm serious about this. And in this joyful way, we're simply going within. And we're going to just know how tired we are of these ghosts that continue to come up. And we're simply calling upon our Ghostbuster great I am self, that God presence within us. That's reminding us of our truth. That there's one life, one presence, one power. And that power, presence, that life is God. And that God has created everything out of itself. Therefore, everything has that essence of this divine, eternal life. And that which is true of God is true about us. So we're simply going to allow those ghosts to return into the nothingness from which they came as we stand in this truth right now. And as we stand in the silence, recognizing the one life, the one power, the one presence that is our life. And that is the truth in which we stand. We simply let it be.